speaking project. Who defines old? Linda will share her take on learning when old is old, and hopefully you will be persuaded to try something new, even if you are no longer young. If you are young, you may learn something new about the people who are old. Are you confused? Sit back and listen to Linda's humorous perspective in old, vintage, or antique. You can do it. Please welcome Linda.
Thank you, Vanessa. Toastmasters and guests, I'm old. How do I know this? I know this because my idea of cutting loose is staying up past 9 p.m., reading a juicy novel, and having some peach tea. That might not be your idea of cutting loose, but it's mine. My official I'm old checklist starts like this. You're old when your naturally gray hair starts soliciting some senior discounts. You're old when you've survived 2 colonoscopies 10 years apart and you had your first one several years late. And I realized that I'm old because I recently wowed a room of young people at the Radically Rural Conference in Keene, New Hampshire. Picture this. I brought my big handy quilter Sweet 16 free motion quilting machine and set it up at the Colonial Theater. There was a social quilting project that was done earlier in the day, and my job was to quilt the 3 layers. So I put it in my machine, and someone would say, where does your community do their craft? And they would throw out the answers, and I'm listening, and I'm quilting the answers. Recreation center, YMCA, synagogue, church. When it was done, I snipped the threads, I show everyone the quilt, and the leader of this conference, a 30-something-year-old woman, says, "Oh my, you know cursive." Like it's an ancient language? I think I crossed from old to vintage. So let's define the terms. Old. You're old when you say back in the day, like it was a good day before we had streaming devices. You're vintage when your quirks are charming and your children come to visit and they say, "Oh, Mom, can I have that? I want to put it on Etsy. I could get 3 times what you paid for it." You're antique when your aches and pains have historical significance. Do you remember that election year when that shoulder really hurt? Oh. You tend to be a walking museum exhibit then. We need to not throw in the towel. We need to embrace our quirks, our perks, and start learning new things. Let me share 2 stories that happened to me recently. I went into the Keene Women's Club meeting, 20 women, average age 85. They gave a scholarship to a young lady, and she hasn't deposited the check for 5 months. This is a catastrophe. Let's stop payment on that check. I wrote her a card and she never responded. Oh, the women were in an uproar, and I'm thinking, that poor girl has probably never seen a check. In this world of technology, she doesn't know what to do with a check. So I said, does anyone have a cell phone? Maybe you could text her, say, "Hello, so-and-so. I'm sure you're busy studying. This is so-and-so from the Keene Women's Club. We'd like you to take the check to the bursar's office to have it credited on your account." Well, while I was speaking, someone was writing down exactly what I said, and another woman, 75, with a cell phone, uses it for calls, pictures, and also knows how to text. text the young woman, and within 1 minute, she replied, I did that 2 weeks ago. Crisis over. Everyone's heart rate could go down. It was lovely. I also went to France in October. I went with a group of 40 people, aged 20 something to 80 something. It was a wonderful group. I was having dinner. We were all having dinner, and a young 30 something couple stood up and said, we're going to the Eiffel Tower tonight. If anyone would like to join us, come to the lobby at 9:30. My eyes perked up. I haven't seen the Eiffel Tower for 43 years. I wanted to go back, but this was evening, and I'm older, and I have to take the metro. And I don't know, it's my first night in Paris. I'm with all these strangers. And then the boy across from me says, I'm a National Guardsman, a tow truck driver, and I'll be your your guard, your personal guard. And I just thought, well, I'm going. And this guy, Andrew, he was amazing. He was my guardian angel the whole trip. Now, there are perks of going old and vintage and antique. People open the door for you more frequently. The grocery baggers try to even out your bag so they're the same weight, sort of like balancing the scales of justice. It takes them a little extra time. And then you get senior discounts without asking. It's like putting more money in your pocket. So let's see. Old, old is like the bread that you forgot and left on the counter, and it's in a stage, but it's not a sentence. Vintage is when people think you're pretty classy or classical and like classic wine or classic car. It's not a bad thing. I don't mind being vintage. Antique is when you're so old you are priceless. So whether you're old, vintage, or antique, you're not finished. You're fabulous. You need to stay engaged. I'm sure you need to show the world that you've got more speeches to write and give. My challenge to you, do you think you're old? Anyone here think they're old? Think again. You could join Toastmasters, try watercolor, play Rummikub, or take piano lessons, or you could even learn to send a group text. When you figure it out, could you let me know how to do it? Well, your wheels must be churning now. Do you want to learn? What do you want to learn? Do you want to inspire someone? Do you want to embrace a new hobby? Or do you want to tackle base camp finally? Just do it.
Wow. Thank you, Linda. That was very inspiring as well. I'm not sure which category I fall into, but the new base camp is really good. I have looked at that, and it's really well worth doing. And especially I think for people who were challenged by the technology and intimidated by the previous base camp, the current one is much better. Thank you, Linda. Next, we will have another facilitator round. Please welcome Paula back.
Thank you. All right, this round will start off with the following three people. Let's go with Francine, then Tom, and then Marjane.
Linda, I absolutely love listening to your speeches, and your humor is just going up every time. You're really improving. I really loved when you forgot the word you were looking for, because you just kept going like it was part of the speech, like you meant to have an old person memory issue. So I think it just fit this speech perfectly, and you did a fantastic job. Back to you, Paula.
Thank you, Francine. Tom, what do you have to add? You are on mute.
Yeah, because what I said shouldn't have been said. I think you had a senior moment when you hesitated in describing the young bodyguard you could have had. He may have been more of a bodyguard than we expected. I think that worked out really well. You played with it and let it go right through. Keep playing. It was very humorous. Enjoy what you do.
Thank you, Tom. Marjane.
Lots of fun. I loved this speech, Linda. Uh, the descriptions of old vintage antique. I did think you almost had two endings, because I thought you were going to end it when you said you're not finished, you're fabulous, and then you kept going. So that's one thing that, maybe put that at the end after the just do it. And then the other thing I really liked was when you brought out the money. I thought that was a great visual. Good job.
Thank you, Marjane. Next up, let's do Sue Lighthoff, Rosemary, and then Susan Schultz.
Linda, everything I agree that's been said thus far. I am one in my neighborhood that, even though I am on the oldish side for work, I am in the young group for my neighborhood. So when I say things like texting and why are we sending this, I get this look. So I absolutely understand the both sides of the coin, because I don't know where I stand in this neighborhood. Thanks.
Linda, I love your speech. I always look forward to them, and you do bring so much humor. I loved everything you said about the old vintage and antique. But I, like Marjane, loved when you said you're not finished, you're fabulous. I think you should end it with that too, and maybe have something around your neck like a boa and say, you're not finished, you're fabulous, and end it with that. Thank you.
Great advice there, Rosemary. No gobbledygook there. Susan Schultz, you're up.
Thank you, Linda. I thought it was marvelous. You had it well organized. You used the mastery of the rule of three, the three items to compare. Your word choices were clear. The way you delivered them were superb. And I just love your flair. You're just really enjoying yourself. And I love how you always bring in the quilting. And you're able to weave that in, that story, every time you do. I'm always looking forward to it. I have no suggestions for improvement. I thought it was fabulous.